Well, all right. So here we are. I am Dr. Jamie Horrocks. Welcome to the outside and the first video podcast. I think it's a fantastic thing. Of course, it's not my idea to do this. My arm was twisted by my guest and guest host here, Cathy Shilling. And we met at the GLP conference, and through that, and through my participation in that, and her gracious making space for me and all of that, and we've kept up a correspondence since then. And she thought it would be fabulous for us to do something like this around GLPs and whatnot, and we've been teasing it about, and here we are. So I think on the outside, people know my writings and all that stuff. Here, they might be seeing my face for the first time if they're not connected with me on the other socials. But again, here I am in the flesh finally, and thanks to Cathy for kind of coaxing me out of the attic, as it were, and onto the screen. But with that, meet Cathy. Cathy, how are you? Who are you? And why are we here?
Hi, I'm Cathy Shilling. I'm a speech and language therapist in the UK, and part of my role is supporting children and young people who, in particular, are gestalt language processors. Although I do lots of things, this is my passion and has been for a number of years. And I guess I'm very fortunate to have met you, Jamie, because you've really opened um, my mind, my knowledge to understanding the minds of GLPs. And so I feel that I'm hoping that what will come from this podcast is a whole range of ideas, of constellations, of themes, and they'll all be interconnected, but a great way of sharing our passions.
Wonderful. So I think we've agreed upon a format
Yep.
where you essentially ask me, okay, what are we talking about? This is what I want to talk about. I found this article and, I want to ask you about it. And I know that for this first instance, you wanted to talk about like, what is this gestalt processing thing to begin with,
Yeah.
right? Is it a real thing? Is it something that Jamie made up in emails back and forth with Marge Blanc? Is it a figment of their imagination or whatever? And so to that end, I wrote kind of a briefing document, if you will. And I've shared that with you, and I'll share it along with this recording with everybody else. But I think that was a good place to start. And I think kind of the question to you, what is GLP to you, right? As
Yeah.
professionally, personally.
So I guess I first had this light bulb moment when I listened to a podcast with Alexandria Zakos back in 2021. And I'd been thinking about a little boy that I was working with. He was 4, and I'd gone in with my speech and language therapy head on of being child led, kind of, not really, and thinking, analysing his language, his speech, and making suggestions to his parents of how to support him. But it wasn't working, and I couldn't understand why. I was thinking, I'm doing everything that I know in my knowledge base. And then as I'm driving my car, it was a frosty morning, I had this light bulb moment as I listened about um, a different way of processing, a different way of acquiring language, a different way of thinking, a different way of sensing the world. And immediately I thought about this little boy, and and then followed the guilt, thinking, oh my goodness, what have I been doing? I haven't really been thinking about him. I've just been in my theoretical speech and language therapy mind. And so for me, GLP is, it's not about language acquisition. It's not about language thinking. It's not about a brand. It's not about a therapeutic intervention. It's so much more holistic than that. It kind of underpins everything that I now do when I'm supporting children or young people who I might identify as being a GLP. Um, and it's that holistic element, which you talk about in this first right script that you put together for. Sorry if I'm not using the right words. Um, yeah, that really I feel explains that, supports it, underpins
Right.
everything.
So I know you're a therapist, a language therapist, and I'm a school teacher and, deal with language and numbers and all this kind of thing. Um, and I think about the argument against what I am and what you support, right? That it doesn't quite exist. There's no evidence for it. There's no random controlled trials for it, etc. And I think about my own path to literacy and language, and I needed something coherent to wrap my head around to say, I have all these things floating around in my head, and with them, I have all these scripts that are useful and things that I've acquired over the years and so on. And when I was diagnosed as autistic and even the earlier diagnoses of like, sensory integration disorders and these kinds of things, and I have that level two support needs from a language on my autism diagnosis, nobody in the system explained to me what that meant. It's like, oh, you need support needs. Go to therapy. And then, as you say, I encountered therapists who had no idea what they were dealing with because, of course, I was not a little boy. I'm a very, very much an adult person, and they don't know what to do. Thankfully for me, I found my way to occupational therapy as well, and to improv theatre from there. And from there, just kind of borrowing scripts and throwing scripts around and that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until later that I came across the works of Marge Blanc. And when I saw that, my own desire professionally for like workflow, reliable, repeatable, a pattern of activities that I can follow, I could trace her thoughts. To me, they were incredibly scientific because I could say, oh, I've done this, I've done this. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, wait, I'm stuck right here. This is where I'm at. And that realization that I was stuck for decades in stage three.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a pathway like, okay, we can start doing these things maybe, stage four, stage five, stage six, etc. And it worked, right? So you do it. I did it to myself, because there was no one here willing to work with me. And then I thought about, the extension of it, literacy and so on. And now I'm writing the story of maths, which is, how do you teach GLPs maths through story and scripts? Because I support high school maths. And as you say, like I didn't have the things that I needed. I didn't have the handbook on autism. I didn't have the handbook on language and literacy. So I wrote them, right? I don't have the scripts, the developments of scripts. So that's where the Substack is, right? It's
Mm.
as I've said in the writing, it is kind of a digital delayed echolalia for me, that I can recall and bring to mind. And so from that standpoint, I find it absolutely fascinating and comical when people say, well, there's no evidence, right? And I'm sitting here reading that evidence of it happening, but where I think in the language aspect, I take like I'm not, yes, I'm a Gestalt language processor, but the hierarchy before that, I'm a Gestalt processor of everything,
Yeah.
of the world, of my life, of adult life, of, when I was a kid and all of that kind of stuff. Everything is processed whole, everything is tuned and felt, and the way that artistic brain deals with memory and time and so on, it all comes in. It's all one gigantic system. And because I'm whole to part, I look at the whole of how my system works and then I write about it, right? Because I don't find myself in a textbook.
And I think that was the big shift for me, supporting the children that I'm working with, is thinking of the whole. So not honing in just on language, was thinking, okay, so what is this experience like with me in a room with things that I know they enjoy, because uh, looking at the bigger picture. We've asked parents what kind of activities, what sensory preferences or play preferences that they may have, thinking about how to even adjust the environment. Do they need the curtains closed? Do they need do they like music? Do they, what is it that is going to um, help with the connection? And for me, that's the first bit, um, is is thinking about how to connect. Not just are the experts with their children, definitely not me. And so
Right.
it that holistic aspect, that thinking in wholes, is something that I guess I've really had to learn and unlearn, because it's sort of like my medical model of speech and language therapy, of thinking in individual units of sounds, bits of sounds, putting those together, putting two words together. None of that was applicable with these children. And so it was thinking so much more than language. It was thinking about the experience as a whole. Um, and yeah, and that's where it started.
So I love that. And I think, I wrote in what I shared with you,
Mm,
Gestalt processing as I understand it, as I live it, right? I'm not trying to define it for everybody, but
no,
as I understand it and I live it, it's not a learning style. It's not a quirk of my language, right? It is an entire architecture of perception, right? It's attunement. It's baked into alexithymia, my autistic system, all of these types of things. How I perceive and exist in the world is as a Gestalt processor.
yeah,
Everything works that way. So it's natural that my language follows that pattern, right? And I think, I've seen the management, if you will, the therapy, if you will, of Gestalt processors teaching us how to exist seems to be concentrated in speech therapy, speech pathology, right? Not in the actual like marriage and family counselor office or school counselor office, right? Or the primary school classroom. Like, there's no awareness. It's like human has one way of being, and that's it. And I find that boring,
I
actually.
know. But it's sneaking in. It's sort of the last couple of months, I've had several schools contact me and say, hey, we'd really like to know more about Gestalt language processing. We'd like to know more about how we can support some of the children in our school. And even going back to yesterday, I received a phone call exactly about this. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this feels like quite a big deal, because getting it right in those environments is just so important. So um yeah, so I've got to really plan and think about what are going to be the main things that are going to support um those educators to make an impact on the children and young people that they're supporting.
Right. And I hope what I shared with you is helpful. I mean, I think
Mm,
in terms of dividing things up like we like to divide it up, right? But the attention, right? So my classroom is arranged because I understand I absorb the whole of things. I absorb the whole room, the energy space of the room. And so I set things up for that in mind, right? I know how my memory space works. And just kind of sharing with you now, I had a panic attack and a meltdown related to memory and stuff that happened in the moment at school Friday, right? And it took yesterday to compose myself because of the way we have memory and time and how everything kind of collapses when something has very like is synchronous across time. Um, so that's an aspect of Gestalt processing as well. Just identity. Am I allowed to call myself a Gestalt processor, or must I just call myself whatever the industry wants me to? Right. My sensory experience, both in the kind of clinical sense of what smells annoy me and how makeup feels on my face and that kind of stuff, but also the nice part of sensory life as an adult, right? How coffee tastes and how candles smell and, the warmth of somebody, comfortable next to you, etc. And then that attunement in relation that's necessary for creativity to happen and all these kinds of things that are aspects of it. I don't find that I can reason with the Royal College and those people who say I don't exist. I don't find their arguments compelling at all.
No, and I don't think as somebody that is trying to be as attuned as possible with the children, the families, the young people that I come into contact with, that they would agree with um, the sort of the people that are suggesting that there is no such thing as GLP, because we see it. We see it in every aspect
Mhm.
of their being. I had a
Right.
colleague who said to me about a session, oh, can you, I think maybe you need to introduce something else to the session because they're really stuck. And I said, no, 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 no. I'm not moving on. I might have something available. It might
Mhm.
be there as a an opportunity, if a curiosity to see if it is something that the little boy that I was working with might enjoy. But actually, part of the session with me, his gestalt of the whole situation was that we read the Gruffalo every single session, and that's how we started
I love it. I love it.
every single time. And I, and my colleague was saying, but you need to move on. No, 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 don't need to move on. This is just perfect. And through that, it I got a sense of that this little boy became calm, regulated, and then it was like, hey, you understand me. This is what I need in order to be settled in this environment. This is what you do. You are part of this big
Great.
puzzle.
Great. The whole of it.
Yeah.
Right. The entirety of it. And I think that's a wonderful place to be professionally, where you can create those atmospheres and those environments where they can thrive and they can engage and grow. And if you're truly child-led, then they'll tell you when they're
Mm.
ready. And I think it kind of does harm to them to say, we're ready for you on your behalf because we're professionally busy and we need to move you on. Right. So, I say this as somebody who has stuck stage 3 for quite some time. We're very smart. We can work our way around things if we need to. And when we're ready, we're ready. And you have to find the right environment, I think. And I think that's brilliant, absolutely great. I know we're running on against the clock here for today. That does seem kind of a happy place to leave it, though.
It does.
Um,
The
yeah.
the wholeness of
Hi.
our first podcast and the wholeness of
Yes.
of what we've been talking about. Um,
Hi. But I think, the resonance kind of this whole circle, from your first inquiry, my appearance, our chit chat, and so on, and now here we are. Um, I'm very happy about that. I have to be quite honest. It's for somebody with my background to be invited and so on. I'm like, wow, I never thought that. It's a very warm, kind of warm, fuzzy feeling. I just wanted to name that I really appreciate, your um, asking and the care that you provided at the conference. And then when it kind of teased around of like, hey, maybe we should do this. I felt comfortable doing that because you've created that space. And so I just wanted to thank you, and as co-host, I guess, of this space. Um and so we'll do it weekly. I
yeah.
would imagine it's Saturday morning for me. It's middle of the night for you, right? Probably interrupting supper and whatnot. But yourself in the UK, myself in America. Um, we'll manage the logistics and I very much look forward to this continuing as something really, really cool.
And thank you, Jamie. I think huh, I don't think you realize the impact that you have on so many people within this community. And so literally when you're saying about me, I'm sort of like almost cringing, thinking, well, actually, I feel the same way about you, that you would say, hey, Cathy Shilling, yeah, I'll do a podcast with you. That sounds great because we've connected and, and we've got that sort of shared passion. And so yeah, so thank you. It's I feel that there's so much to talk about. So I'll stop talking now in preparation for
Great.
next week.
Before we get all weepy about it and all that. All right. Well, thank you so much, and
Thank you.
we'll see you next week.
See you next week.